I think a lot of people have had a series they've read over the years, a manga, a light novel, or they watched an anime to where there is multiple female love interest for a character, and your favorite female character doesn't win because either they're the childhood friend or they're just not the main female character that is the poster cover girl of the series. Basically, I think everybody that reads these type of series like harems or rom-coms or just romance in general usually feel very much disappointment at the end of those stories because of who the MC ends up with. However, the 100 Girlfriends Who Really, Really Love You is a spin on that genre. It is a spin to where nobody loses at all. Every single character wins. And the whole premise of the show is literally about that. And it's just so amazing. It is such a good series because it's like our man Rentaro, our main male character, has to rizz up 100 different girls because if he does not, they will die. And it's a very dramatic plot with a very comfy feeling story because he has to have all these individual characters legitimately feel like they're blessed, like they have a really good life. And it is a true harem story. It is not one of those stories to where an MC is being a beta male and not being able to choose who he wants to be with, etc. throughout like 200 to 300 chapters. No, this series is not that. Literally at the end of this chapter, Rentaro, or this episode, Rentaro is like, hey, you both will be my girlfriends. And he convinces both of them by using the massive riz that this dude has to be able to convince them. He has a tsundere and just this lovey-dovey girl that both love him right there. And it's just, that's 2 out of the 100 girlfriends that he has to riz up. And so, let's get into it. Okay, what is this show about and why am I hyping it up? Because I know everybody, when they think of a romance, rom-com, harem, etc., a lot of people are going to be instantly turned off. Because, let's be honest, not everybody likes a slice-of-life series with, romance, etc., and especially harems, because anyone that probably gets into anime and has watched anime probably has seen a fair share of harems. Let's be honest. And when you watch one harem, for the most part, you've kind of seen them all. Like, there's just a lot of copy and paste harem manga and anime throughout the industry. And if you've seen one anime, pretty much you kind of know the story beats and where it's going to go, etc. You know the cliches, you know about the beach episode, you know about the slowdown of the plot, the beta male, MC that doesn't know who he wants to be with, but at the end of the day, you know he's going to be with the main cover girl because that's just how the stories go. So, yes, I know many, when they first hear about what the concept of the show is, like it's a harem rom-com and all that, is just not going to even have interest. But it is definitely not one of those. And I promise you, from what I read of it, I got around chapter 30 something of the manga, it does not degrade, at least from what I read. And people have continuously told me that it gets better and better as the story goes on. So judging by how the fans absolutely love this show, or love the manga, I'm willing to bet you it is straight quality. Like, it does not navigate or kind of get away from what made this series popular and why people actually love it. There's a lot of attention to detail and a lot of love that is poured into the original series, aka the manga. That's not even including this anime. So, I will say that if you're one of those individuals that just don't want to start this because you've already watched enough harems and stuff like that, disregard that notion and try this. I promise you, it is different. It is legitimately a different anime. Now, with that out of the way, let's actually get into this episode. Nothing can be perfect, okay? Not everything or nothing in this world can be perfect. But if I had to put a label on 100 Girlfriends, this episode that came out, I would say that this was as close to perfection that this episode could have gotten. It is very close. Like, this is almost a masterpiece episode quality. Like, it is, like, it may not have, like, fancy animation, like fight scenes, etc., but, because obviously this isn't that type of story, but what I'm saying is that in terms of adapting the story and keeping the tone and elevating the content from the manga is actually impressive, because a lot of the gags and jokes within 100 Girlfriends is stuff that might not translate well into a anime setting. And a lot of the puns and jokes as well, since they're technically in Japanese, they might be also lost in translation because of English audiences or anyone that watches, 100 Girlfriends in a different language with a different, sub, a lot of the translations could be, like, lost, and you might not get the full joke. But somehow, at least from my experience of watching the English sub here, everything translated very well with this episode, and even some cut content, like, we had this, the whole god scene where, Rentaro meets the god. This scene is really funny, because it actually kind of breaks the fourth wall, and the very concept of, like, this series, at least the manga, it's very self-aware of what it is, and the ridiculous nature of what, 100 Girlfriends really is. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous, and it's very self-aware of itself, and it seems like the anime is following that path, and actually, in some degree, even more self-aware than actually the manga. And I appreciate that, because there's multiple things throughout this episode that is added in that's not actually even in the manga, and it's a nice adaptation that elevates it into the anime format. Like, he mentions, like, oh, some of my lines were cut and all that. I feel like some of my lines were edited out or cut out to, save time. This god guy talks about that, breaking the fourth wall. And then he also, we have little scenes here, like a paper on the wall that says, oh, here's some details that you might not have known about if you're a manga reader. Basically saying, like, oh yeah, even though you're a manga reader, there's still some details that's going to be added into this anime that will give a little bit of background history or context to some characters that you never knew about. I like that. It's nice. It's immersive, and it breaks the fourth wall at the proper times, and it really draws you in. It knows how to reel you in, but also disconnect you at the same time to really just enjoy what you're watching and be entertained by the first episode. It's really good. Like, the gags and stuff obviously can come off as subjective taste, because obviously comedy is very, very subjective. Some people like, let's say fart jokes, and then some people like really dark humor. There's a vast difference between both of those. And obviously comedy does come down to the individual, but I do think that at the very least the way the comedy is translated into this, it definitely will kind of grip those that, have read the manga. Because, like, if you hear a joke or you read a joke and all that, you're not going to find it as funny. Let's be honest, okay? If you hear it over and over. But, somehow, even though I knew what was going to happen this episode, and thanks to them adapting it into an anime, I still laughed considerably while watching this. I was smiling and laughing while watching this, even though I knew some jokes were coming, and then some jokes that were even added in. This is what I like to say that did a proper adaptation and elevated the source material to a whole new level when it comes to the show. I am just very impressed by the attention to detail episode 1 had. Now, with that all mentioned, though, I do want to talk about a few things with the overarching plot of this first episode for anime onlys, because I've been talking a lot about just the adaptation and how well it's been. Now, when it comes to the actual plot, Rentaro finds out something very, very dark. He finds out that if he does not rizz up 100 girls, basically, that is destined to him as soulmates, they will die. Like, they will straight up die. And this adds a nice layer of dramatic, like, tone to the story, even though it's obviously comedy in nature. It basically kind of gives a reason to why Rentaro cannot give up, and he has to get all 100. Because if he doesn't actually go out with all 100, any of those could die and just be lonely for the rest of their lives. They will never find another soulmate. They'll never be with anyone. They were destined to be alone and die alone. And that's just a very dark outlook on life, so to speak. And Rentaro, being a very happy-go-lucky and very generous individual that really loves people, he doesn't want that. And so his mission, his goal, is to give these 100 different girls as much love as he can. And it's just like, obviously it pushes the boundary of just how much can you really do as one individual with 100 different people, but it really is just inspiring, and it's very comfy. It doesn't try to be too serious, but it's emotional, and it does make you just really respect the character, because once again, he is not a beta male. He's clearly someone that really knows how to use Riz, and just be a great Giga Chad character. Just, I love him. Rentaro is such a good MC for a story. He's a very refreshing breath of fresh air, and I think that, the very undertones of that, with the story plays very well with his character. And speaking of other things, there's nice little attention to details that is actually throughout this episode that I think does need to be mentioned. And what I mean by that is that we have character details, like her mole that's on her thigh is actually in this episode. And I know that seems very minor, and not a lot of people might care too much about that, and only manga readers will really know this detail, but they did put it in this episode, and I want to clarify a few things. This isn't a spoiler, it's something very important. Is that the animators that made this episode, to kind of go in length to add a mole, a little dot, so to speak, on her thigh, briefly in one scene, kind of shows that they really do have attention to detail and they are passionate about this project, because the animator that had to draw those scenes, etc., they didn't need to do that. It was such a minor detail with a little dot that it's like, not everybody's going to notice. Most people that watch this, even manga readers, are probably not even really going to notice that or think about that probably at first. But the fact that that was added in for her character and there is a little mole on her, it kind of shows that, yeah, they don't want to miss any details. They really do want to add everything. They don't want to really cut content if they don't have to. And I think that really just shows the dedication of the staff, that they really will go at lengths to do anything they can to make sure that, this really is elevating the source material. So, yeah, there's little details here and there. There's obviously great art and animation throughout this episode. I love these characters, and honestly, this tsundere is absolutely amazing. And I want to be honest with you, I kind of grew out of tsunderes over the years. Like, I always felt like they were just very annoying, and I just eventually kind of like, I don't care about them too much. But this tsundere is honestly done just so well that even me that doesn't really care about tsunderes anymore, I'm like, yo, she's actually a really good tsundere. She's a good character. She has enough dere and tsun in her character to have a nice blend. It's not just all tsun, so to speak. I really appreciate that. But yeah, I wanted to shout out 100 Girlfriends That Really, Really Love You, because this is a good show, and it deserves to be talked about. I've been patiently awaiting this. The only thing I am curious about now with this show is how the voice acting is going to be. I mean, voice acting so far has been excellent, but I am legitimately curious on how they're going to execute, like, the voice acting for 100 different characters. Like, that's going to be absolutely expensive and ridiculous, so we'll have to see where that one goes. But I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for watching. May you all have a fantastic day or night wherever you live. Be safe, stay healthy, guys. Chibi out.